Now, Sergio Perez shouldn't have to endure racial remarks from a senior member of Red Bull's F1 team, and it finally appears that there might be a shift in the right direction, as the team themselves seem ready to take decisive action against Helmut Marko's recurring discriminatory remarks about Perez. Not only that, but many fans demand his sacking as well, which is what prompted the reaction in the first place. We know that Helmut Marko prefers Verstappen over Perez, but did it really have to come to this, and what can be done about it? Last week, Marko questioned Perez's supposed Mexican mentality, as he called it, marking yet another instance of derogatory remarks about Perez's background made with the purpose of destructive criticism. Previously, Marko made comments suggesting Perez shouldn't be concerned about a potential missile strike in Saudi Arabia because he comes from Mexico City, which by the way Perez isn't even from, alluding to the fact that the city itself is dangerous due to gang activity. In another instance, Marko made a joke implying Perez may have consumed tequila the night before a race because he was slowed during a safety car restart. So this is the second time now that Marko has insinuated that Perez's performance is inconsistent due to his South American origin, with the most recent example occurring last week when the Red Bull advisor stated that Perez's focus isn't on par with European drivers like Max Verstappen or Sebastian Vettel. Whether intended or not, Marko's subsequent attempt to clarify his comments to Austrian outlet OE24 only reinforced his original ones, essentially repeating that a Mexican has a different mentality compared to a German or a Dutchman, which aligns with the initial interpretation of his statement, and that's where this became even more controversial. This was eventually followed by an actual apology issued in German and English by the same media platform that hosted the original interview. The Red Bull-owned channel's website featured Marko's statement, in which he apologized for the offensive remark, acknowledging that making generalizations about people based on their nationality, race, or ethnicity is inappropriate, and he also recognized that attributing Perez's fluctuating performances to his cultural heritage was incorrect. This is very bad, to put it lightly, because while Red Bull's involvement in basically persuading Marko into this apology holds symbolic significance, it appears that Marko genuinely fails to even understand why his comments were problematic in the first place, which in my opinion is a significant concern that needs addressing. It's one thing to scrutinize or criticize Perez as an F1 driver for his performance, but it's entirely different to just assert that perceived shortcomings exist because he's Mexican. It might seem improbable that Marko set out to offend Perez or anyone else, but that's ultimately irrelevant, simply because ignorance cannot excuse someone so prominent, especially one who has repeatedly made these comments. Marko's past remarks made it evident that he believes in the existence of a Mexican mentality and considers it a factor in explaining issues with Perez's performance. And while Marko may view these comments as neutral observations, they are in fact far from it. Marko has effectively given substance to the notion of anti-Mexican sentiment and demonstrated its genuine threat. Many fans took to social media calling for Marko to be sacked, saying this wasn't even his first time and that they need to get rid of him because he only does bad things for the sport, and some are even calling on the FIA to react. I have to agree with this because, for example, this is exactly what Lewis Hamilton was fighting for, and to be honest, I'm a bit surprised about why there is no reaction from him. Every sport should be a safe haven for its athletes, but unfortunately Formula 1 is not, and this has been the case for a while now. Further proof of this is that Perez himself has previously expressed concerns about the presence of anti-Mexican sentiment within the F1 community. Following his victory in last year's Singapore Grand Prix, Perez mentioned that his earlier rough performance patch, with only one podium in 5 races won by his teammate Max Verstappen, had been amplified by the F1 media. He further says that there tends to be more scrutiny and criticism directed towards Latin drivers, him himself included, when they have a challenging race or a string of poor performances. In contrast, he believes that European drivers often escape such intense scrutiny, and while he acknowledges these sentiments, he also draws motivation from them and doesn't take them too personally, as is suitable for a professional athlete. It'll be very interesting to see how people react at the Mexican Grand Prix, especially if Marko Helmut travels and is present in the paddock and in the box, which I personally think will not be the case. As recently as the Italian Grand Prix, Perez emphasized in interviews that his relationship with Marko isn't accurately portrayed in the media, and he stated that they have good relations, with Marko having consistently supported him at a wide level. Nevertheless, it's important to acknowledge that these specific incidents can't be easy for Perez to digest or dismiss, considering his past statements, and if that's the case, the responsibility shouldn't rest solely on him to endure them in silence. Perez made history by ending a 3-decade-long wait for a Mexican F1 driver when he debuted in 2011, and since then, he's become Mexico's most successful driver, surpassing Pedro Rodriguez by securing 6 victories. By the time his current contract with Red Bull ends, he'll have one of the longest careers in F1 history, and his aspiration has been to serve as an inspiration for young Mexicans, so it's imperative for Red Bull to support this aspiration rather than hinder it. The fact that Marko's previous comments went unaddressed wasn't particularly encouraging. However, Red Bull has taken a significant step toward rectifying this, even if it's only the initial move. Now, one might question why Red Bull Racing didn't publicly address the situation. And the straightforward answer is that Marko is neither an employee of Red Bull Racing nor their official spokesperson. He's an advisor associated with the parent company, Red Bull GmbH, who previously reported directly to Dietrich Mateschitz, the mastermind behind the Red Bull F1 empire and a longtime friend of Marko. While Marko does represent the Red Bull brand in various capacities, he operates independently of the Red Bull Racing team structure. He's been permitted by Red Bull to act somewhat autonomously. Consequently, Marko isn't answerable to anyone within Red Bull Racing, which, even if it wished to, couldn't take unilateral action, and on the surface, it might appear easy for the team to issue a statement distancing themselves from his comments or condemning him. However, there was a more significant symbolic victory, as Marko's behavior has been an issue that only the parent company could address in the past, and it never did. Now it's taken action, reflecting a crucial change following Mateschitz passing last year. There have been indications of Marko clashing with Oliver Mintzlaff, the chief executive of corporate projects and investments overseeing the Red Bull Racing and AlphaTauri F1 operations, and integrating the F1 teams into a more structured corporate framework means figures like Marko now exist within a defined structure where accountability is not negotiable. Marko may not have initially favoured this shift, and while he has downplayed any discord, incidents like this will undoubtedly test that relationship. These comments coming from a man with a position like Helmut Marko just allows other people's ignorance to grow, which is simply not acceptable. This now presents Red Bull with an opportunity to demonstrate who holds the true authority and what kind of company it aims to be. Holding Marko accountable for his statement marks a substantial departure from the past, and it's likely that Red Bull Racing exerted pressure on the parent company to take this action. Had Red Bull taken no action, nothing would have changed. Marko would have continued unchecked, dismissing it as just talk, and the cycle would likely have repeated. Perez, along with others, deserves more than that, and Red Bull was right to stand by its driver and confront a figure who was previously considered untouchable. However, it's crucial to recognise that doing so once won't suffice in the long run, so let's hope things will change sooner rather than later. So after hearing all this, let us know in the comments what you think about Helmut Marko and his behaviour towards Perez. Should he be punished? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.